Sexy people love the internet. It is Dave, it is Duncan, back for another album review, and for this review.
I don't know what I'm doing. Like, why am I doing? I'm a fighter in the UFC.
Oh, surf's up, bro.
Yep.
Right, we have been checking out the new album from Newcastle metal quartet CREAK.
I would have thought you would at least tried a Tyneside accent. I'm slightly. Can you?
Nobody wants to hear that, Duncan. You know how my accents often merge into other accents.
Yeah, they all sound Australian. Every single one of them goes Australian.
Well, we touch Indian in there.
There's no Indian in Australia.
Just all Australian.
It's all Australian.
Fair enough. The band's new album, Depth Perception, will be released on August 18th on Prosthetic Records. Following on from the band's 2020 EP, Bitter Picture, CREAK managed to push...
That's different than Better Picture.
Yeah, definitely. Managed to push their boundaries further still, finding room for experimentation within their chaotic vision. Citing influences such as Yüth Forever and Sworn In, their background in hardcore is rarely far from view, but eerie, Lynchian interludes...
Oh, don't try and sell me with your fish, right?
I didn't write this, Duncan. I didn't write this.
Right, they're PR guys like that. He's clearly a Lynch head. He's mentioned Twin Peaks about 100 times on recordings. Write it for Duncan and
Lynchian, I'll just say that again. Lynchian interludes. Clean vocals.
What's that? We're going to add an extra 0.5. Think I'm gonna. Just like that.
Metallic sensibilities contribute additional layers that elevate their sound. Lyrically and thematically, the tracks are saturated with pure emotion, fueled by, amongst other things, the anguish that accompanied vocalist Jack Dunn's mother with cancer. Using CREAK as an outlet for his processing his feelings during that time, he comments, "I was feeling guilty about my own emotions and going over things in a circle in my own head, trying to get to a point where I could try to become comfortable with them. Finding it easier to work through his feelings through his lyrics than to verbalise in real life, depth perception."
You were doing so well.
Fuck. Something
you almost got the Better Picture. Don't fucking hate me, right?
Something of an anthology of dread, pain, mortality and hope. The album took shape over several months between 2021 and 2022, with Connor Sweeney, formerly of Loathe, reprising the role he took on for Bitter Picture, producing, mixing and mastering the 12 blistering tracks.
Well, that answers a question.
Yeah.
It's answering a big old question, so yeah.
The live recording achieves the near impossible task of capturing the frenetic, unbridled vigour of their live show, their angular metalcore punctuating an eerie soundscape permeated with anxious energy. So, Duncan, we're down the creek checking out the new album from no Jordy. I don't know. I don't know if I'd have guessed especially with that accent, I wouldn't have guessed Newcastle, but I wouldn't have guessed this band were from Newcastle. But
I actually had them pegged for the UK, so
no, you didn't.
Yes, well, you mentioned the band that I most thought they sounded like in this, and they are from Liverpool.
Well, that's true. I was just thinking that when I said that, I was thinking, Loathe are from Liverpool, but don't sound like they're from Liverpool.
Yeah, they're fucking 2-hour train ride or something. So
yeah, location means fuck all these days, don't it?
Means nothing.
Fuck all.
I think we can scrap location, the Channel 4 programme, because it means nothing.
Get reruns of Dawson's Creek on. I heard their 2020 EP, Bitter Picture.
Yeah.
And it's a very raw introduction to the band, and the blend of sounds that they bring to the table, which is somewhere in the ballpark of like a metalcore meets hardcore with a wee nu metal sprinkling in there as well.
Oh, hello.
But
Salt
then
Bay nu metal. It's like that. I bet that.
but there are some experimental touches in there too. And this new album sounds like they've really worked on incorporating all of those styles, but in a much more impactful way. Because when that guitar kicked in on Crossroads,
face melted.
My eyes lit up like a fucking Christmas tree when that kicked in. I was like a fucking deer in the headlights. Like, holy fucking Christ. That tone is thick.
And it gets more savage as well. That, like, Crossroads is like a good entry to the album. There are a couple of sections on here which are like
thick,
like eye wincing. You know, like I to the point where like I felt pain.
Yes.
Listening to it, I was just like, I fucking Sims, like what would happen if the Terminator had all the flesh ripped off his body and then he was attached to the back of a like lorry which dragged him through streets slowly while being driven over by a fucking concrete mixer. Whilst a anime cartoon fucking piano drops in his head. Is that fucking heavy? I got to a point where I was just like only dogs and people that listen to savage metal can hear that tone. You know what I mean?
Extra thick, just the way I like it, Duncan.
Yeah.
Can I get a thickness? Can I get a thickness? It reminded me actually when I heard it. There's a band I liked from years ago called Lifeforms. Way back when we did our previous website, they had an album called Multidimensional, and when it kicked in, I was like, oh, that's a wee bit reminiscent of that band and that album. Check out Lifeforms Multidimensional if you haven't. But
still the payroll, Dave, yeah.
But the tone on this album is just really girthy, really just sounds massive. But the aside from the kind of thick tone, the guitars had a little bit of like almost kind of like a Tony Danza type like fluidity to it. So like when that kicked in, I was like, oh, hold on, we're ticking some boxes of mine right here.
You just want to like, just for anyone that casually doesn't know Tony Danza's Tapdance Extravaganza. Yeah, that's what he means. He doesn't actually mean Tony Danza.
Not actually Tony Danza.
Like sometimes you can't short form things for people that because they were an obscure band, Dave. It wasn't as if like they tripped off the tongue of everyone. So not Tony Danza. Sure. Tony Danza wasn't lifting up a 7-string going bow bow. Like, he wasn't in between tap dancing and being in Taxi. You know what I mean? That's not what happened.
Taxi. But the guitars did remind me of that, so like instantly I was kind of hooked in. The riffs are just fucking insanely good. Like you've got part Tony Danza, the band. There's a little bit of a kind of ion dissonance kind of feeling there. You've got like a groovier kind of car bomb, but it's cool because it didn't feel like an imitation kind of way. Like there were plenty of moments in there where I felt like it sounded like CREAK, you know, when they've got their own kind of thing going on. You'll hear character that is just them. That being said, there is a riff on Here in the Woods that gave me actual wood. It's right in the middle of the track, and it is right out of the Blood Has Been Shed playbook. I shit you not. Oh my god. It's the second track on the album and there's a riff in the middle. It's so fucking good. It just reminded me of Blood Has Been Shed. I was like, oh yes, fucking Dave's in, fuck it. And I was all good with that. I'm not saying that as like a negative on the band, because Blood Has Been Shed are no more. So if CREAK want to pick up that mantle, I am all in. I am.
That's where you went. My brain went to, don't take it a compliment that he gave me a hard on.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's true. But what I really liked was that in amongst this album of cluster bombs of fucking chaos, you know, in amongst the Crossroads and the Here in the Woods, there are other elements that these guys have inserted into the mix that show you another side to this band. And these moments are cleverly situated in a place that allows the album to breathe a bit more. because I think had this album been just a full album of like fucking crushing riff after fucking spine splitting riff, as cool as that would have been, and that would have been cool.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for it. Blood has been shed, Dave.
But even Blood Has Been Shed had cleans, and you know they had that moment on the album where it kind of it softens
that
out.
moment on the album, yes.
Kinda, yeah. I think this might have been, really cool, but very relentless, and maybe just maybe not a lot of balance to it. But they add in these key features, and the first key feature to add to that balance is that atmosphere. Which is subtly placed early on in the album. You can hear it just a wee bit in the background, but then they start to fully expand on that on An Endless Black, which is a 40-odd second interlude.
But that's a key. Like I think almost everything you mentioned here are ideas that are introduced early in the background, but by the end of the album are prominent, and that to me is. Like, you know what I'm going to say? That's attention to detail, that chef's kiss placement of songs, and that is a conceptual idea that pays off.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Like that, you win me over when you do that. Like, if I'm picking that out by the end of the album, and then on the second listen, I'm like, actually, that element wasn't there at the beginning, but it was in the background, and then by the end, it was at the front, but it's all the way through it. Yeah. That's just really good songwriting.
Yeah, it's clever. Because after that that interlude, it's the kind of preface to track 4, which is Doomed, and that track has more of that atmosphere coming out into the track, giving you kind of feeling of dread that kind of sits in the background of these, still again very heavy, very got the crushing riff still in there, and it's a great kind of pivot on the album, which shifts the tone ever so slightly and breaks things up, so the album doesn't feel like you're getting the same thing on every song. And it's smartly utilised throughout the release to give you either these moments of space and breathing room, or sometimes a more stripped back version of the band on the likes of Left of Heaven, which is a bit more trippy and minimalist, or I'm Not Alone in the Dark, which is stripped back, a wee bit Deftonesy in places, but still with that kind of layer of like scorched earth kind of vocals from Jack as well. Which brings me on to the other element on the depth perception, which works a treat, clean vocals.
Yep.
Jack has a ridiculously savage tone. Like his screaming voice just rips through the album, really giving it huge energy, and there's just this unbridled emotion throughout the album. You can feel it, every scream that he gives, you can feel that coming through. But there are drops of clean vocals that are the kind of perfect kind of light to that darkness. And you first get that on Restless Dreams, which is a real kind of breath of fresh air that opens
track
that
5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not as like they're keeping that in the pocket.
Yes.
For 5 tracks. You know what I mean? That's a tool that they can utilise.
Yep.
It's a commercial tool that gets people in, and they choose not to use it until track 5.
Yeah.
And that's a smart fucking move, because it caught me completely off guard. To the point where I was like, that. Do they have is this just like a guest vocalist or something that's like that? Because I don't read the press statement. Sorry, guys. I thought, all right, that's like guest vocals, and then cleans continue to come in intermittently and tracks spaced out afterwards, to the point where I was like, oh no, like they have that in their pocket.
Yeah.
Like they choose not to use it all the time, which is a smart fucking move.
I thought it was really smart, because I think if they'd used it really early on, it wouldn't have had the same effect. So I'm glad they didn't saturate every track with it. I think it maybe would have started to sound too kind of formulaic if they'd start using it on every song. But the fact they just drop it in on certain tracks, especially almost halfway through the album, added a real surprise to the album. And it added
halfway through the album and almost 2/3 through that song.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not even like first chorus singing. It's like, no, keep it, hold.
Yeah.
Hold.
Yeah.
Fucking love it.
Yeah. So like in that first part of the album, you're getting all that technicality, then they're adding in this atmosphere, and then track 5, you're like, wait a minute, here's another fucking bomb for you, clean vocals, and it keeps you engaged that bit more, because you're like, oh, what else have these guys got that they're not fucking telling us about? The choruses are really good. There's a chorus on Cold Shoulder, which is fucking awesome, one of my favourites on the album. Great clean melody, a little bit kind of reminding me of like Devil Sold the Soul, which I really liked as well. But to be honest, I keep coming back to the riffs because I think the riffs alone, I think would sell me on this album. There are, like, if you just like separate the riffs from everything else and just listen to them, there's so much going on. Like, there's so many.
Like,
it really
they
is.
don't. There's a part of me that kind of feels like if you told me that the person that wrote these guitar riffs had like some sort of like ADHD, I would believe that. They never really settle on anything.
No.
The difference on this one is, though, I never felt like, all right, you've just done that for the sake of putting a technical element in. There's always a natural switch in everything they do, and they go all over the place on this one. Like, the riffs never really stay static for any more than 30 seconds on any track.
But they're so good that they're still memorable. Like, if you take a band like Carbon, for example, who are all over the place, like with their technicality and their riffs, but there's so many parts of their albums that stick in your head. And this was kind of like that. The so many switch ups and so many end parts that were like a fucking, like, felt like that kind of Mortal Kombat fucking finish him kind of type moment. You're just like, oh fucking hell. Very Moorish, and technical enough that it isn't predictable in the slightest. They're really good at giving you these little like 15-20 second riff bombs and then jumping onto something else, but it never felt too disjointed that the songs started to sound disorganized. Plus I felt like that layer of atmosphere that kind of weaves in and out kind of binds it all together as well. I'd also lump the drumming into that equation as well, because without the kind of clever footwork and the little kind of rhythmical changes from Robert Wilkinson, those riffs might not have landed quite as devastatingly well as they did. So I need to give props to Robert. He's absolutely killing it behind the kit. His playing is tight, like just ridiculous. The production on this is also fucking crushing. Guitar tone, as I mentioned, is a girthy son of a bitch. And those, like the parts when they kind of move into those kind of more dissonant parts, just sound like so kind of demonic on the album. But I really like the drum sound as well. I think the drums have got plenty of punch to them. The bass drums are nice. Got a nice kind of thudding sound, but they've got enough top end that the accent, the riffs and the kind of patterns really well. Bass frequencies as well, spot on. Through the heavy stuff, the bass is really giving that thickness, but there's moments on tracks like the early hours knows my secrets, and you can hear the bass starting to come more to the forefront in some little runs and stuff, which is really cool. It said it was recorded live. I don't know how much of it is recorded live. I don't know if I'd have guessed that it was live, to be honest, because it's got an ambience to it for sure, but it's also got the kind of weight of a really chunky studio production as well. So, and obviously there's little kind of glitchy kind of vocal effects happening every now and again, which are quite cool as well. So there's obviously some studio stuff going on, but I love the sound of the album. I thought it was super punchy, like massive sounding, which I think the delivery of it is just fucking really good. I don't think there's anything hugely negative to say about this. I think if anything, the only thing I felt was it was maybe a touch too long. Like there was maybe I felt like there was maybe a track too long on this. But then
it's interesting you say that.
Oh really?
However, I've got a point to make.
All right, okay. However, when I thought about that, I was like, I don't know which track I would take out, because they all kind of play their part in the kind of flow of the album. So I can see why they've kept 12 tracks in there. I just felt like by the end of it, I thought maybe it was slightly overlong. But apart from that, there's similarities for sure. The genres that these guys are playing with, there's always going to be likenesses to other bands. You know, the Loathe vibe is there. You can hear it pop its head up.
Yep.
But I think these guys probably lean heavier into the technical side of things. Like Loathe, so it feels a bit more intricate in places as well. But yeah, for the most part, thoroughly enjoyed this, right up my street. What about yourself? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of joked at the start there that when you mentioned Loathe, I was like, oh, ding ding ding, because that's literally like the first time I listened to this, the thing that like stood out to me is on Loathe's previous album, which I fucking adore, and actually the longer it stuck with me. I think it scored really, really high at the end of the year for me. I think it was like my third favourite album that year. And hindsight now, it might be my favourite from that year. I spin that album still to fucking death, right? Love it. Absolutely love it. And what this reminded me in a lot of parts is Loathe have tracks where they don't do the Deftonesy thing, right? Which are they're just fucking savage. And they're glitchy, and the guitar riffs go all over the fucking place and do these weird noises and all the rest. And there's a lot of that in here. And some of it is production. Specifically the way they include the background noise, the actual atmospheric synths. Yeah. The guitar work and just everything kind of grouped together, even vocals to an extent. But I was getting huge swaths of tons of other things, like just like falling in, just falling like an avalanche. Deftones are there, maybe not as much as a band that I keep mentioning this year. Willhaven, there are slabs of Willhaven in this, just like that use of dark atmosphere, those punishing breakdown sections just reminded me a lot of that. Also, LLNN, or that use of just discordant, thick, savage noise. Yeah. It's in here as well. It's not as abrasive, and I'm using the word simple. LLNN is not simple, but in comparison, it's simple compared to the switch-ups in this. Interesting you mentioned Car Bomb. Car Bomb I was thinking about as well, like a really heavy Candiria. Like those elements where it's on the spectrum of being kind of jazz-inspired, but it's not mathy. Yeah. By any stretch of the imagination. What they do is they keep it within the 4/4 time. They just fuck around what they can do on the guitar, which I really, really love. Those moments which kind of felt almost Nemec-like at times as well, where they utilize a weird guitar slide thing that they're doing. It sounds like a transformer masturbating. I absolutely love those elements, and they're dotted throughout. The big thing for me on this album, the thing that just hooked me in straight away, was a point you mentioned earlier on, whereas this is an album that starts off at a place, finishes at a place, and there is a movement all the way through it. And that movement of sound and texture and melody doesn't even really start rearing its head properly until the interlude track 3, An Endless Black. And then becomes part of like the mainstay sound on Doomed. Restless Dreams introduces a bit of melody, and it continues to build. By the time you get to the title track, Depth Perception, you are getting like huge swaths of almost Deftones-esque melody, synths, this gravitas, more like everything's like it's like a Pokemon evolving. Everything's evolved up to the next level, and it continues to do that right to the very end. By the time you get to A Head Full of Rain, which is the final track, which almost devolves back into this really glitchy, really abrasive sounding track, you kind of feel like this album has ebbed, flowed, and found its natural full stop. I love that about this. I think the attention to detail on that is so smart, and I also think if we don't point it out, a lot of people will listen to this album and not pick it out because it's so smartly done. I don't know if that's I would love to think that's a conscious decision by the band and the producer. I don't know if it is. I'm going to give them all the credit in the world though, because I loved it. I think there's so many moments on this that just like absolutely filled my heart with fucking dark joy. It's a very, 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 very bleak album, and like hearing more about the subject matter that comes through. Like I wasn't getting to the end of this album thinking these guys have had a nice day. You know what I mean? I didn't think that. I genuinely felt that this was being pulled from somewhere dark. This is pulled from life experience, as opposed to a Nickelback album, which is pulled from fantasy. You know what I mean? Was he in San Quentin? Was he in San Quentin?
Of course he was.
No. See, the only way he ever saw San Quentin was on a postcard. Like this album like feels like it's rooted in something. There does feel like that bit of kind of expunging and exercising, like something that's been weighty on the soul. This is a soul purge of an album. The guitar riffs, I mean, maybe one of the most interesting albums I've heard this year, guitar-wise, in that it never finds, everything's memorable. Like every riff, like by the fourth listen to this one, I was like, oh, like I fucking absolutely on the edge of my seat, just waiting for the next bit to jump in. I love that about this because it, like I said before, it feels like there's always a kind of a progression on a theme in the way it's designed, and it's. How he's going to remember all this live is beyond me. I don't know. It's just so, it's so switchy. But, and you mentioned the drumming. The drumming just carries us like all the way through. You need that. Like some of those elements aren't nearly as punchy.
Yeah.
The first time I heard the early hours, Know My Secrets, I thought this track had finished 3 times during it because of bits where it just stops. And then comes back in again, and I was like, "Oh right, we're on." And no, this is still the same track. And it has like, there's a couple of breakdowns on this. What I love about them is they do the deathcore breakdown thing, but they never do a deathcore breakdown.
Yeah.
So they utilize the technique of everything out and then noise, and then you're like, "All right, we're going to finish on that one." And then they do it for like maybe like a 4 loop. And then they go bow bow, but like you jump away somewhere else, or they expand on it where other bands would finish on it. It's just an element they've used as opposed to finishing the track is something to build towards the finish of a track. And all the tracks in this album finish on this degree of importance and grandeur. My only gripe on this one is I'm a bit confused with the last 2 tracks.
Right.
The last 2 tracks, both together, feel like an idea which conceptually could be one track. We have I'm Not Alone in the Dark, which is probably the most kind of jaggy, short, stabby bit here. It's kind of used, they have a couple of tracks on here that are used for kind of interlude and atmosphere, and I get the feeling this is is supposed to be utilised for that before you get a Head Full of Rain, which is just full on fucking punishing savagery to finish out. But I don't like, it isn't a soft track, or it isn't a track that lulls you into it. It isn't even a track that builds into it. It just feels like a short savage track to be followed by a short savage track to finish it, and I don't get that conceptually. Now, it's not my album, it's not my vision, I didn't write it, so fuck me, right? And I'm fully aware of that. But as a listening experience, it's slightly disorientating, considering the rest of the album to me feels like it is crafted so well. So it's the only thing, if I had to choose between the 2, I don't know which one I'd drop. So I'm kind of in the Davey camp here, where I'm like, I kind of don't want to, like that. So when someone asks me what my favourite kid is, and I'm like, I'm not allowed to answer that question, even if I did have a favourite. Which, because I'm on a recording, I don't, right? Like, you know, that way where you're kind of... So I don't know which one I'd drop, and I like them both for their different elements. I just don't understand the purpose of having the 2 of them side by side. Almost to the point where... And I couldn't even move one of them ahead of Cold Shoulder, because I think Cold Shoulder is the natural answer to the early hours Know My Secrets, because it's the one that has the big Deftonesy, hooky chorusy parts, which are fucking amazing and lush. So you kind of have to have something savage after that. But then I really like the track. So I don't know. It's a conundrum that's going to stick with me probably until the end of the year. But it's my only gripe. I think the rest of the album is flawlessly placed. I think the final 2 songs, there's something there that doesn't quite work as well as the rest of it for me. But I'm not confusing everyone, including the band, if they are watching this. Sorry, I don't know what it is, and I wouldn't. If I was you, I wouldn't remove any of them anyway. So I don't know. There's just a flow element that I hit that bit, and I'm like, If I was in the movie Whiplash, like Dave loves, I would say, not quite my tempo, but I wouldn't throw a chair at you. So there we go.
Excellent. So scores for Depth Perception by CREAK. I mean,
it's got to be high. It's got to be high.
It is high. I mean, like, if you hadn't guessed, this is a Dave album. This is like all the things that Dave loves. Riffs were awesome, production was awesome, vocals are absolutely on fire. Drumming, I'm a drummer, loved the drumming on the album as well. Only thing was the length. I just felt it was just a touch. I would have took one track out, don't know which one, but that was my only thing. So I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5 on this one. Duncan, where are you coming in with this one?
Hashtag twinsies. Oh. Yeah, it's a 4.5. I think, notwithstanding my small issues that I have with it, and they are small, and it's personal choice more than anything else. I think this is an absolute stormer of an album. I mean, this is fucking great. Once again, I feel like I repeat myself a lot in these. The UK metal scene at the moment is just fucking awesome, and CREAK are another example of another facet which is at the highest level. You know, like all the bands we mention as comparisons are bands that are understood, established, and known as at the top of what they do, and I think CREAK sit comfortably amongst them. And they're a young band. This is an early career album, and I feel like they are the answer to the question that some idiot out there might be saying when they say, "I really like Loathe, but they're a bit too singy for me." I think CREAK are the band that answers that question. I would also think that as a touring partner, I would love to see these guys open for Loathe. Yeah, well, I was just thinking that the elements that these guys have, they could fit comfortably on so many different bills. So many gigs. You could go to you could go almost grindcore with these guys in support, and you could go to the extra. It's the one thing you mentioned, which we never really touched on. You go Nu-Metal-y as well, and they would fit on that. Like very, very, very well. I think the same way that everyone was confused when Deftones picked Epidemic to open for them on their UK tour, and they were like, and I was like, no, I get it. I can imagine even like a band like Deftones coming over and saying, we want CREAK to open for us, and I think that would work. I think they've got a sound which hits on all these different elements that is diverse enough that they would, I think live as well, they're just going to gain fans. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think this guy does very well to hide his Scouse. Not Scouse. That's Liverpool. What do they call people from? Geordie. Geordie. Right. Well, you look at me as if I should know that. They're not from Georgetown, are they? Geordie, mate. Yeah, Geordie, mate. Another shrimp on the bar. So, CREAK, Depth Perception, out on August 18th on Prosthetic Records. Links below. Check out! To the band and to the pre-order. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Stick some comments in below. That is a review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon. Bye, everyone. My present freaks and black